Kicking off her shoes, Pauline draped herself across the sofa, lying back so that her body pressed against the tight-fitting dress as it shifted above her knees. She wanted to play games, and David was content to play along. Settling in an armchair, he resolved to enjoy the preamble. 2 years he had waited for this moment, so a few minutes more were easily tolerable in the knowledge that time was all that stood between him and the final surrender of Pauline's body. He had long resigned himself to the fact that only a miracle could save his passion from being forever unrequited. Now that miracle was unfolding around him. He was happy to let it run its natural course. Pauline giggled. "Tell me, David, do you have erotic fantasies about me?" He was taken aback by her directness. It was so different to the Pauline he knew, or thought he knew. "Very often," he answered, "usually at the most embarrassing times, sometimes at work even, when I'm in a meeting with my boss and suddenly find I haven't heard a word he has said." "Whatever do you do then?" "Bend forward, cross my legs, try to look intelligent and hope he hasn't noticed." Pauline laughed loudly. "I don't believe a word, but I like it. I had erotic fantasies about you this afternoon. Does that shock you?" "To the core, but don't let that stop you having them." Curtailing her laughter, Pauline looked around. "Have you got a drink in this place?" "Sure, there's a tray over there behind you on the sideboard." David stood up. "What would you like?" "Whiskey, vodka, whatever's going." Bottles of whiskey and vodka were included in the selection on the tray, but David preferred the former. As he began to fill 2 glasses, she came beside him, brushing her arm against his. He felt the knot in his stomach as his body responded to the sensation of her closeness. "Do I have striking eyes, David?" "You have very beautiful eyes." "Presumably that means no." Pauline looked up at him. "What is my best feature then? How would I be described in a private detective's report?" "Pauline, there's no need to torture yourself this way." The contradiction was not lost on David even as he spoke the words. The torment Pauline was suffering was exactly what he had set out to create, and it had achieved its objective, undoubtedly being the basis of the reasoning that had brought her to him tonight. "To pick out your outstanding features would mean listing everything about you. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever known or seen in my life. That's not just it, though. There's more than that to you, an extra special something simmering just below the surface, a warm sensuality radiating from you, so that just to be in your presence fills me with a joy no other woman has ever aroused in me. If Howard no longer wants to feel that joy, then he's one hell of a bloody fool." Who made the first move David could never remember, but suddenly she was in his arms, pressing her body against him, her open mouth locked on his, her tongue sliding teasingly across the tip of his. He held her to him as though his very existence depended on her clinging to him, his senses reeling at the urgency of her kisses, his hands running wildly over the body that was soon to be his. No longer was it a dream, no longer a fantasy. Pulling herself away, Pauline picked up a glass and swallowed a large mouthful of whiskey. The alcohol went straight to her head, inducing an intoxication she found highly pleasurable. For 2 years she had been content to see and be aware of this man's craving for her body. It was no longer enough. Now she needed to know the reality of it. To hell with Howard and his big-eyed blonde. "You have a nice place here, David. I'm very impressed," she said, moving across the room, glass in hand. Pushing open a door with her foot, she added, "This, I presume, is the bedroom?" "You found it in one." Smiling, she said, "Why don't you join me? You know I hate to drink alone."